I'm your host, Dr. M, and you're listening to Aligned You, a podcast designed to assist you to truly be aligned through your body, head, and heart so you can reach your full potential in your own unique way. Hey there, Aligned You listeners, Dr. M here, and welcome to this week's episode. This week's episode is the third part of a three-part series we've been doing of our Jumpstart Workshop. Now, this particular workshop is a workshop that I have been running for the last 20 years. Well, different versions of it. It's definitely been upgraded and up-leveled over the years. But it's a workshop that I've been running in my practices for the last 2 decades. It's actually my 20th year anniversary of being in practice this year, which is crazy in many, many ways. It feels like a minute ago and also many, many moons ago that I first was in practice down in Wollongong, of all places. I think I've shared with you early on in episode 1 when I actually took the opportunity of this series, not of episode 1 in 2017, episode 1 3 weeks ago, where I took the opportunity to reintroduce myself and actually explain a little bit more about why it is that I'm a chiropractor. Often people ask me why I don't talk about chiropractic more on Aligned You. And as I mentioned in the first part of this particular 3-part series, is I'm always talking about chiropractic. The philosophies and the vitalistic philosophies and the well-being and wellness philosophies that run through chiropractic, after 20 years, also run through me. So it is who I am and how I be most of the time, if not, well, actually all the time. And so when I'm speaking in different organizations, different corporate groups, those vitalistic philosophies run through everything that I do. So I don't need to be calling it chiropractic when I'm talking about different thought processes, mindset, frameworks, all the however and whatever you want to call it, is I don't need to be speaking about it specifically for the undercurrents of that to be running through. I hope that makes sense. So in episode 1, I went through a little bit of an introduction to me because I realized not all of you perhaps have been listening to my podcasts since 2017. And so it was a great opportunity to do that. Also spoke around why people might want to come and see a chiropractor in the first place. Now, if you're not local to me here in Sydney, if you're watching our YouTube channel, my beautiful integrative chiropractic practice is behind me here. I'm in the booth at the moment recording here in Alexandria. We're about 3 k's out of the CBD of Sydney. So we're really central to the city. If you're not local to us and you need to be pointed in the right direction of an awesome chiropractor close to you, by all means reach out. You can reach out via our Instagram page, which is aligned.you on Insta, or you're welcome to shoot us a message at an email at hello@aligned.you, that's ALIGNED, the letter u.com.au, and I'm super happy to point you in the right direction. So in terms of, as I said, we went through some of the reasons why and also the goals of care. We talked a bit more about the boo-boos that I see really commonly when people are coming in to see me. They put heat on things that should have had ice on them, ice on things that should have had heat on them, and a few other, all the in-betweens as well. So we discussed that. I went into why structure governs function. Now, across most professions, career paths, we all have structure within our work life that actually allows us to function properly around it. I had a beautiful accountant come in the other day. Engineers love this stuff, but accountants do too. An accountant come in the other day and she wasn't quite grasping why her body was showing her signs and signals of stress. She did know that she had bad posture. She did know she had stress, but it actually hadn't been combined or, sewn together as to why they were actually interrelated or proportional to each other. And so we talk more about that. And as you've heard me talk a lot about over the years, is our structure does govern our function. How can our body possibly function at its best if our posture is not in the correct position and our brain and body don't have the best opportunity to actually be communicating properly? We went more into that. I also talked about my favorite Netflix analogy, which has now been updated to my favorite clearing out your RAM on your laptop analogy. I went more into that. And last week, in the second part of this 3-part series, is I spoke about the 3 different stresses, the chemical, the physical, and the emotional stresses, and how that plays out in your system if your body isn't adapting fast enough to them. I shared with you the body stress score quiz. We've been through a lot of the last couple of weeks, folks. I've shared with you body stress score quiz, which you can check out in the show notes if you're watching the audio version. Try again, Dr. M. If you are listening to the audio version of the podcast via Spotify or Apple Podcasts, or if you happen to be on our YouTube channel, there should be a QR code jumping up right now that you can check out the body stress score quiz on our it's not aligned.u. I'm having a shocker today. Let me start that again. alignedu.com.au website. It's a free quiz. It's a really great quiz to just check out your baselines. It's a good starting point. It can point you in the right direction of who might be the right practitioner or person that you need to see to actually get things moving in the right direction. You've heard me talk about it regularly before, and if you're a new listener, you're about to hear about it again. But I am a big proponent of baseline testing. The reason being, it's very hard to actually celebrate your wins or understand perhaps where you're going backwards if you don't actually know where you're starting from. I'm going to say that again. It's very hard to be able to celebrate your wins or understand where things might be going backwards if you actually don't know where you're starting from. And as I mentioned last week, it would be lovely. It would be lovely if life was linear and it was just always on this steady rise up. But that's not life. It's certainly not the life I've experienced. It's not the life that I see my clients experiencing. So it's important to understand that throughout life, as our healing journey isn't linear, it's doing dipsy doodles and all the in-betweens, it's important to be checking in on those baselines so you can see what areas of your health, wellness, and well-being may need some attention. You've heard me talk a lot about it, and the example that comes straight to mind is around, particularly for those of you who may be perimenopausal or moving into menopause, so important to have baselines early so you know what shifted and appropriate measures can be taken to actually assist your system with the change it's going through. There's some brilliant episodes I recorded with my dear friend, Dr. Andrea Huddleston. Check them out. We go into more detail about what sort of testing, particularly if you fall into that category, what sort of testing you should be pushing for or asking for or requesting firmly when it comes to that. When it comes to the baselines that I actually check in on practice is that when it's clinically appropriate, we get x-rays. And the reason being is I want to see what's going on underneath. What's going on under the hood, so to speak, in the sense of it's all well and good that we know what's going on from the outside, but what is actually happening from the inside? Because we discussed whether or not your posture could change on its own or just through exercise. And I mentioned last week that I've looked after lots of personal trainers, lots of athletes, lots of Pilates instructors, lots of yoga instructors, teachers over the years, that they're outside, they look quite balanced. Sort of. There's usually postural imbalances, but sometimes then when we look on the inside, there's clear imbalances that are affecting their overall performance. And what I do find, we discussed as well the stages of care over the last couple of weeks. I find for most of my clients that are actually moving into proactive wellness care, they've got the concept that chiropractic goes beyond just pain and symptoms. Is the pain and symptoms relief is well and truly a thing of the past. And I look after a lot of people that are high performers in their career, whatever their career path is. They're high performers in life. I look after a lot of my clients. In fact, I would say all of my clients are people that want to be living a life at their best. Whatever their best is, whatever their walk of life is, I look after a diverse range of humans at Mitchell Road Chiropractic. And one of the beautiful things is that as we are creating more ease, more grace, more connection within your system, is it actually allows for better function. And the cool thing is, what I find with most of those high performers is that they're actually doing quite a few different things, a myriad of things, to support their overall performance and also their chiropractic adjustments. So they're not just coming to see me. They are looking after how they're moving. They're looking after how they're eating as best as possible. There's an understanding that we need to counteract a modern day life. And particularly if people are living their life hard and at pace in terms of their work life and the pace of their life and even their play life as well, is it's so important we're doing things to counteract that pace, to help slow things down so the connection piece can be there and so that they are able to perform at their best in their own unique way. So we've been through lots over the last couple of weeks. That was a relatively quick recap, but I highly recommend if you haven't listened to it, jump back into it because we obviously go into a bit more detail, pop my teeth back in, than that particular recap. But to finish off with this 3-part series, today I wanted to dive into some things you can be doing to counteract a modern day life. I mentioned last week that there are some particular exercises that I'm going to share with you in a separate video. Keep your eye out for that. Might be a minute before that gets done, but they will be coming. Or make sure you get along to one of our live workshops where I show you in real time. But it's really easy in a modern day life to get caught up with all the things that are complicated. And sometimes that then becomes overwhelming and creates more stress into your system. So I like to keep things pretty simple. And there should be an image popping up right now if you're watching our YouTube channel. Or if you're not, it's actually a image of the image that is currently popping up is a guy bent over, neck crooked, looking at his telephone. Don't think we actually call them telephones anymore. Pretty sure we call them iPhones or Androids. But you know what I mean? And, you know, we get it when people come into the practice. Often they've been racing around all day. They just need a second. They need a second to check their emails, to check what they've missed on socials, whatever it is that they need a moment to actually be able to check their phones. But one of the things I always recommend, I've got my phone here if you're watching the YouTube channel, always recommend is to actually bring it up in front of your face so that you are keeping your neck into an ideal position. If you have kids or if you're have grandkids, or if you have nieces, nephews, if you have little people in your life, that's really quite broad, and they're spending a lot of time on their screens, I highly recommend them getting to be on their tummies when they're having screen time. And the reason being is then they're actually going to place their neck into the correct position rather than being all crouched over and in an awkward posture. So I'm not saying don't be on your phones, because that would be hypocritical of me. I'm on my phone plenty. What I try and do as much as possible is make sure it's in the best possible position to support an ideal posture. The other thing to be aware of is how much and when you're getting that blue wavelength light into your eyes. And particularly at night, if you're going to be on your phone, is to try and have the lights on around you. I remember back to being little, and some of you are old enough to remember when you probably had one television for the family, maybe two. Two was very fancy. But we were always encouraged to stay at least 6 foot away from the television so it didn't hurt our eyes. Now think about it in terms of how close all of the screens that we have, often at night, particularly if you're trying not to wake up your partner, is you have it even closer so that the light isn't getting into their eyes. So having an awareness of the position of your phone or your device, B is to actually be aware of how long you're on it. If you're on your phone long enough that you said, doctor, and my arms are going to get sore if I've held it up for the time I'm on it, my suggestion to you would be get off your bloody phone. You've probably been on your phone for too long. But certainly something to think about is the positioning of your phone. The other thing I would suggest, if you do have little people around you, is an awareness piece of you're always being watched. So are they watching you being on your phone for 24/7, and yet you're actually asking them to get off their devices? Just something to think about. I'm not asking you to change it, just asking you to think about it. The other common boo-boos when it comes to postures is, and again, there's going to be a slide popping up if you're on our YouTube channel, is people often ask me about sleeping posture and, you know, what's the ideal sleeping posture? The reality is it's really, your body is so clever, unless you've had a big night and for other reasons you're that crashed out, is that your body's really clever and it will actually move to a comfortable position. Now, the most important things is, or are, I should say, is that you've got a supportive pillow that's able to help keep your spine in and your neck in neutral. And also the quality and the age of your mattress. I'm a big fan of going to check out mattresses rather than just purchasing them online. And the reason being is that often people come in and they're so excited because they tell me all about the firmest mattress they've ever got in their life, which might work for them depending on their posture, but depending on how you're shaped. So for example, those of you who have seen me in real life, or those of you who've seen photos, I'm quite hourglass. Like I've got a little middle and I'm quite broad across the shoulders at the moment with, thank you, menopause weight. I'm quite hippie as well. So if I'm on too firm of a bed, it actually pushes me out of alignment because of my shape. I actually need a bed that is soft enough that it can actually support my curves. Hope that makes sense. If you happen to be sleeping next to a partner, it's important to actually go and test the bed together so you can actually see the best and get some assistance for the bed that actually supports both of you in the best possible way. Ames and I recently got a new bed when we moved, and it was really interesting because of my history with my spine, is that I'm very aware of if something is supportive or not. She's not so sensitive to that. So it was important that we could find a bed that actually supported my lower back so that I'm not looking like an old lady every morning when I get out of bed. Hope this is landing. aligned you listeners, is it's important to actually get the right fit versus just the quickest thing there when possible. The other thing that's really important is understanding your work postures, particularly if you are still working from home or you're in a hybrid situation where at home might mean you're on a laptop, it may mean you're on the couch, it may mean that you are not in the best possible posture as far as you're concerned for long hours at the computer. So have an awareness of it. I'm not going to be hypocritical about it. I too sit on the couch with my laptop from time to time. I think the key to all of this is that you actually have an awareness of how long you're actually there and what you might need to do to counteract it. When it comes to movement and your training I would highly, highly recommend that you marry up what sort of exercise you're doing for what sort of goals you are wanting to achieve. What do I mean by that? I was had a gorgeous client come in and she had really hurt herself. A lot of our local gyms in the area, we've got brilliant gyms in our local area. A lot of our gyms in the local area were all doing their fitness testing at the same time. You know, that if you go to a gym regularly, perhaps have actually experienced that in the past as well. And she'd really stuffed up her neck, like really stuffed it up. And I said, oh, what were you doing when you actually did your neck? Like when you injured it? She said she was doing a shoulder press of 50 kilos up. And I said, what for? Are you training for a particular event or is there something going on for you? And she said, no, it just was a personal best. And I asked, when in life are you going to be lifting 50 kilos above your head? And she said, well, never. This lady wasn't competing. She wasn't working towards an event. She wasn't competing in something that required her to lift that amount. And so I use that example because I see that often is people, particularly in a group training situation, it gets a bit competitive. And so what then happens is that rather than tuning into what they need, it gets caught up in the moment and not being able to cut out the noise from what's going on around. So understanding if you've had a year off from training is work your way back into it. As a dear friend of mine, Dr. Phil Burgess down in Gerringong used to say, is you need to earn the right to be able to do those particular exercises. So make sure you give yourself a chance to work your way back into it. So when it comes to maximizing your care, there's some things to focus on. Some key areas to really think about when it comes to what you can be doing to really maximize your results in between adjustments, whether you're seeing me or you perhaps are seeing one of your local chiropractors. Sticking to your schedule of adjustments is really important. When we're creating your adjustment schedule, it is to create a rhythm, a healing rhythm. Now, in our practice, and I think if you're watching the YouTube channel, you can see Atlas behind me at the moment, we always recommend that you cuddle Atlas. And why do we do that? Is because Atlas is super grounded because all 4 feet are on the ground all the time. You might have heard of grounding. We look after a lot of people that are super busy. So often they've raced in the door and cuddling Atlas actually helps them arrive. Setting an intention and breathing, being present, making sure you're having a good glass of water. A great rule of thumb when it comes to water is that divide your weight by 40, and that's how many liters if your weight is in kilos. So however much you weigh, let's say you weigh 80 kilos, divide it by 40, you should be having at least 2 liters of water a day, folks. So one of the great ways of doing that is after adjustment, make sure you have a glass of water before you actually go for a walk. The walk helps your brain integrate the information that it's just had. We are meant to be up on 2 feet and moving regularly. And so walking after adjustment is really important. You heard me mention it as well, is that other boo-boos as far as or things to have an awareness of when it comes to day-to-day postures. I'm not super anal about it. I get it. Life happens. But the more aware you can be of it, then the less we actually need to counteract. And I always recommend my clients, particularly after they've been to this particular workshop or listened to this particular series, one of the best ways to figure out if it has actually landed is to share it with your family and friends. Now, always ask their permission first. I think there's an element of particularly when you've been with somebody for a long time and there's certain things that are routine when you get home, like, hey, babe, how was your day? And it's very easy just to vomitron all the information on them. And I always think it's a great idea to ask if they really want to know about it. And then if there's a yes, then you've got permission to do so. So remember, aligned you listeners, when it comes to your chiropractic care, there's some things to remember. Our structure governs our function. Really the care that particularly that I focus on in my practice is designed to, yes, get you out of the discomfort that you might have been when you first walk in, or assist your body to. It's not me getting you out of pain. It's actually your body starting to function properly. It's to make sure that your structure's in the best possible position so you can function at your best. And most importantly, it's about creating ease, flow, and connection within your body and within your system so that you can live your life in your own unique way and live it at your best, so that you can be doing things, as I said, at your best in your own unique way. So that's it for this week, Aligned You listeners. Bye for now, and I'll catch you next time. And that's it for today's episode, Aligned You listeners. Remember to hit the 5-star ratings and share today's episode with your friends. And be sure to join our collective on Facebook and Instagram at Aligned You. Look forward to catching you next time. The information shared on Aligned You podcast is of general nature and for information purposes only. It is not specific medical or personal advice. You should seek assistance from your healthcare practitioner for your individual circumstances. Any information provided doesn't imply endorsement or third-party devices or products and cannot provide you with health and medical advice.